There we are. We're live. Hey, how goes it? Ken Bozak here to talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin accessories. And today I'm with my bro, the one, the only, the one Vortex. How goes it, man?
Hey man, how goes it? I hope everybody is having a day, ladies and
Dude,
gentlemen. It's just great to be back on your show, man. It's been a while. I always love running running into you at conferences and various, Bitcoin meetups. So man, it's just great to see you again.
yeah, man, likewise. And shout out to CryptoCast Network and what you're doing, man. Let everybody know, like, a little bit. I know most of the people, if they fuck with me, they fuck with you. You know what I mean? Like, you're like a legacy content creator in this space, dude. You were one of the people who inspired me to even hit the live stream button to begin with. So let everybody that might not know, like, a little bit about where to find you and your content and what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've been around a little while, basically, like everybody with Bitcoin, I kind of fell down the rabbit hole, right? So discovered it in 2012, 2013, really started caring about it, started investing. And then 2014 started commenting on it. 2015 started, I got my Twitter account. Bitcoin pretty much took over my Twitter account in 2015. And then I also started my show on the World Crypto Network in 2015. So, and then from there, we kind of just kept talking about Bitcoin. And really I started, podcasting in a bear market, a very, very, very bear market. And the reason why is because nobody was talking about Bitcoin back then. Like literally right now, I like to say that we're in the golden age of podcasts. We have amazing content like yours, Ken, Stefan Livera, and just so many people are out there, what Bitcoin did, Peter McCormick. There's just so much good stuff. So essentially, right now we're in this golden age of podcasts. But when I started, there was just nobody doing anything. And me and Gabriel Divine, if you remember that lovely gentleman, I love him because he's our conspiracy theorist guy. And great. But he to this day has not been served a gag order, at least on his Twitter account. He'll definitely be the one tweeting like little birds on there if there's any issues. But no, and so now it's really we started blowing up in when Bitcoin split to BCH, when BCH split off from Bitcoin in 2017 with the fork, that's when we really started picking up steam because we defended the user activated soft fork, and then we started talking about the split. So from there, like World Crypto Network, Tone Vays, Thomas, from Mad Bitcoins, we all started just kind of blowing up a little bit, and that's sort of how we came to have the amount of
but that was
followers.
rightfully deserved. And like you said, we're kind of in like a podcasting bubble. Not to like toot my own horn, but I've been doing this since like 2016, and it was like that was before Bitcoin was cool. And then all of a sudden comes a bull run, and everybody's some sort of miracle savant day trader that wants to add the word crypto to their Twitter handle and become an expert. So like that's why we need to look at the legacy of a lot of the content creators in this space, like yourself and Tone Vays and the World Crypto Network in general, and CryptoCast Network and everything. Like, it helps keep some of the true nature of what crypto was all about instead of making money. Like, that's a lot of this new like podcasting character is like all they do is talk about TA and when to buy, when to sell, or what to buy, what to sell, and not really about anything behind the tech. And it was thanks to you guys I learned a lot about SegWit. Like, I wouldn't have had a freaking clue what was going on. Everybody was like, yo, dude, I would go to meetups, right? I would go to meetups, and this is when I kind of first started like learning more about Bitcoin. This was like 2017. I got in 2016, and I would go to meetups, and I went to one in New York City, and somebody was like, dude, are you a big blocker or are you like a SegWit guy? And I'm like, I like Bitcoin. You don't know what to say. So I was like starting to look into it, and it was like, all your hard work that you guys were up to that made me comfortable knowing like, oh, I'm not going with this, Bitcoin Cash BCH fork. It was almost, and a lot of people would say it was like a maximalist bias report, but it wasn't. Both sides of the argument were laid out pretty educated, like layout. It was just unfortunate for the opposition of Bcashers that it just didn't look good for them what they were up to, and it has proven so like into fruition. Like I said, the legacy information that you provided, you can check out to the current date that you were pretty much accurate on your expectations of Bcash.
Absolutely. And, you can go back on these videos, like you say, you can go to like worldcryptonetwork.com and just search on the search bar there, UASF. And you'll see a whole bunch of videos on there, like the state of the UASF and things like that. And you'll see a bunch of videos of me, of course, being a proponent of the UASF and why it was so important to the community and to Bitcoin at large. And, like to this day, we're still trying to, Tone Vays, myself, Thomas and a bunch of other people. We're still trying to get the truth out there about BCH because, you have to stay vigilant out there because the bad guys will not stop. They are relentless. And so as long as there's bad guys out there, right, we got to make sure that we're doing the good guy thing. And so
see a lot of good guys tapped out in this bear market. So I mean, like, it's really nice to see some of the people that stuck around. A lot of the, I would say, we've lost a lot of I don't want to say thought leaders. A lot of
so we lost a few legacy guys, but here's the thing, man. We gained a bunch of new people. Like, there's a bunch of new people in this bull market that I now pay attention.
That's true. We got Jack now. We got Jack from Twitter. We got prominent. Mark Zuckerberg. He said he went down the rabbit hole and he's spending all 2019 like researching blockchain.
They're hiring like 18 blockchain developers right now. So they're like essentially training people to work on Bitcoin and projects like Bitcoin. And this is really the future. And so, we're telling people, and we're also like sharing the truth about BCH as far as how they implement code. Like literally everything that they do, any new features that's worthwhile. Like, for example, Schnorr, they literally just copy the pull request on BTC.
What are your thoughts on Roger poking fun at the lightning torch and trying to do his own, Bcash dumpster?
Roger has no shame. He's absolutely copied every single he's attached himself to every single movement shamelessly, like the Me Too movement. He'll copy every single grassroots trend in Bitcoin. He'll copy it all, and every time he does this, I even tweeted this out. Like, he's been doing this for years, and every single time it's to no avail. He gets no extra attention. There's nothing that ever takes off. He tries the exact same trend that's in Bitcoin, tries it in BCH, and just doesn't take off.
Dude, I think he's in trouble. He probably got some Chinese mafia investors and miners to invest in Bcash, and he owes them a good pump, or he may lose a foot or an arm or something.
I can tell you this: Roger's in like pretty much no danger. Like, he's got all the money that you could ever hope to have. So all he's going to do is going to keep pushing his bias, keep pushing his particular, viewpoint and things like that. And so we're going to have to just continue to combat it, because unfortunately most of his viewpoints are all false or lies or misunderstandings, and especially with the technology, there's just simply no technology there in BCH. They literally copy and paste anything that's worthwhile from Bitcoin. And so it's important to stay vigilant with that kind of stuff, keep people informed about this and where things are going, because they're just not stopping. Like, their Bitcoin account, at Bitcoin Twitter account, has 1 million followers almost. Yep. And they just tweet daily about terrible things about Bitcoin. So just I'm glad we have people like you, like people like me, and people who just continue to get the truth out there about Bitcoin, about the technology. And this is why what we do, in my opinion, is so important.
Kind of wrap things up on that topic. I'm just disappointed that the class action lawsuit that was being sought after when they were calling BCH Bitcoin and BTC Bitcoin Core, that whole class action, Bitcoin.com shouldn't be allowed to misinform investors with that kind of, like you said, million followers and some plus, and it's just, I don't know. Hopefully, they are held accountable eventually. But we have DJ Me Popsicle in the chat saying Mt. Gox is solvent. Yes, well, I wanted to touch on some of these legacy scams in Bitcoin, because a lot of them are being rehashed. We're seeing even Mt. Gox be resuscitated by Brock Pierce, and the BitConnect business model is being implemented again into things like Tron. I'm seeing with these platforms. I just want to see if we can just inform and talk about some of these things and see like where we have come since then, and like history repeats itself, so where do you see it going again with a potential Mt. Gox 2? So maybe you were around for Mt. Gox, man, so what was it like before the Mt. Gox scam exit crash, and what was it like during that process for somebody that was into Bitcoin currency at the time?
Yeah, so it was, in short, I'll just start off with saying it was pretty devastating at the time when MTGOX actually stopped. But let me just go back a little bit. And, back then when MTGOX had 80+% of the market, everybody was just going to MTGOX. And we all knew that it was early. We all knew that, okay, everything on one single exchange obviously signifies that this is a very early stage kind of movement. But really, people had faith in it. They just continued to have faith in it, and they continued to buy it. And back then, it was very, very niche, very, very small. There was just nobody that knew about it. In my opinion, like 2013 was when actually the world found out about Bitcoin. 2013, 2014, when we hit that $1,200, when we hit that $1,000 mark, that's when like the world, I think, started to find out about Bitcoin. So before then, I got in at around 2012. So there's just the geeks. I got in from a Slashdot article about Silk Road, so started studying, went down the rabbit hole from there.
So and Vortex got into Bitcoin thanks to Silk Road. Who the hell would have guessed that?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. There was that article on there in Slashdot about Silk Road. I clicked on that because Slashdot is a forum and a website for geeks about for programmers and developers about news for developers, right? So about everything that's geeky. And so that was a great site. And that's where that article came up. I clicked on it and I said, this is not possible. Like this, there's no way this is actually physically possible to have this market outside of state control, everything like that. So I went to go and check it out. And sure enough, it was actually operational. And not only was it operational, but there were so many surprises, like how the rating systems were so accurate, how there was so much competition, how there was so much trust, and how everybody was unified in their vision to have this almost cypherpunk vision about this money outside of the state. Like it was absolutely unified. There was a big, huge community, and it felt like everybody kind of was on board the same principles. Nowadays, of course, it's very much more corporate, much more blockchain stuff is in the news and in the community. But there's still, of course, that raw cypherpunk vision in Bitcoin. As Andreas likes to say, it's those hard ass Bitcoiners that fight to have this unstoppable money. And so that's still well and good, but yeah, it was absolutely very small, very niche, and it was very, looking back on it now, thinking about it, I was very surreal because just feel a little bit blessed to be so early in a movement, but also to see how everybody was just under that unified vision. Tone Bayes likes to say that it's a negative now that everybody's not unified under Bitcoin anymore, and I just disagree with that because look, now everybody knows about Bitcoin, even if they don't think that Bitcoin is the best, if they're like, for example, all in on Tron, it doesn't matter because, obviously Bitcoin is what backs up the entire space. If Bitcoin went away, Tron would go away, at least for that store of value principle. And so everything is still depending on Bitcoin. And if you're in Tron, you're going to know about Bitcoin some way, somehow. And that means that eventually you'll see all these lessons where you're like, oh, okay, well, Bitcoin went down and Tron went down even more. Well, maybe next time I should probably stay a little bit more in Bitcoin. Or you find out why Bitcoin is better. Like this Bitcoin thing keeps going up, and my Tron, it keeps going up because of it. I better just double check. And so people it just perpetuates the Bitcoin in the ecosystem, it keeps it permeated. And so that's really important. And so these network effects have continued to rise over the years. But when we saw that MT Gox crash, I remember the night, like I'll never forget. It was with my wife there. She was watching TV on the couch, and I was just looking like at the price as I was browsing the web, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, we see the price moving, and then we see it stop. We literally see the ticker freeze. The price stopped moving. The orders stopped moving. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. And prior to Bitcoin, I wasn't really much into economics or trading. So I wasn't really paying attention to markets. So Bitcoin was my only market that I was thinking. And I just never had seen anything like that before, like literally stop. And when that stopped, like my heart kind of sank a little bit into my chest. And then, you come to that realization, you see like how early and how small Bitcoin was. I knew Bitcoin was going to survive this, just one single exchange. I knew Bitcoin was going to survive it. But boy, did I know that it was going to put a black mark on Bitcoin for at least a couple of years. And we had a very long bear market after that. And so, you see the devastation on people like Andreas's face when he does interviews after that and podcasts after that, right after that. You're just like, it was a difficult, terrible time because we told a lot of people that, look, Bitcoin is safe, but we failed to mention, I guess, that not your keys, not your Bitcoin enough. And now, ever since then, Andreas, of course, and all of us have been really, really hammering that home now since MT Gox. And again, that was a big lesson for the whole space. And so now we know, and now we can move past it. But it was absolutely very, very scary at the time. Everybody blew up. Like Twitter blew up. Everybody was tweeting about it. The podcast.
Yeah, but did anybody ever learn a lesson from it? I mean, I've actually had to sit and watch multiple exchanges have issues. I think it was which one was the first one I got to watch? Was it Bittrex or Bitfinex or something? Which one was it? There was one that did their own like ICO to pay back the.
Oh, that was Bitfinex. Yep.
Bitfinex. So Bitfinex was like the first exchange scam, exit problem, or hack, whatever they want to call it, insider problems they had. It was the first one I experienced.
MT Gox, they claimed to be a hack, and then Bitfinex was I think the second largest one after that.
And then there was CoinCheck, right?
Twice. Well, hold on, Bitfinex got hacked twice, so they had two huge.
I didn't know about that.
Multi-million-dollar losses in the tens of millions of dollars twice. Damn. And that's another reason why I really dislike Bitfinex. They literally got themselves hacked friggin' twice. The second time is when they actually implemented that haircut and then that subsequent token.
Gotcha. Wow. So I missed one too. I only got the second one, and then I seen CoinCheck. CoinCheck was hacked for $350 million worth of NEM or something. I was like, holy shit.
And then BTCE. Watching that one stop, that one was pretty crazy. That brought up like MT Gox feelings a little bit when you saw the ticker.
Well,
stop.
what really I think is, bringing back those vibes is what happened in Canada with Quadriga,
Yeah.
and finding out that the keys have moved, and it's most likely now at this point that the founder that faked his death, it never died, or because the money is moving, and it's
Well, most of those wallets were mostly empty already, right? For a
yeah.
year, for over a year.
Yeah, they're starting to find out a lot more about what he was up to in the background. And then you add that on top of the information of, like, the death certificate being typoed, and, the will being written 7 days after getting married. And it's just like he left. I interviewed one of his friends, and he left his animals with his parents, like the dogs, not with his wife at the time. It's like, who would not leave their pet with the person that you raised the pet with? It's like there's a lot of weird stuff. So, like, now that all that being said, that was even only 3 months ago that this happened, and that was 19,000 Bitcoin, about $160 million worth of Bitcoin were stolen. We now have Mt. Gox itself being resuscitated by Brock Pierce, and I'm just curious of, like, what your thoughts are on, like, as somebody who was sitting there watching the price just freeze, time itself stopping on the markets, and it was, due to this exchange that is now being brought back to life and being mainstreamed even.
Yep, and it's pretty crazy stuff. So this is why we're sparking a lot of regulation, because essentially most of the Bitcoin exchanges out there are unregulated, and and now we're finding out that there's a lot of wash trading out there. I mean, we kind of already knew,
Yeah,
but essentially
they just posted an article saying 80% of the market's manipulated volume.
Yeah, essentially what we find is that really almost 95% of the volume out there, when you spread it across Bitcoin and other coins, was pretty much false. And so what we found out is that a lot of these coins that claim to have the same amount of market cap and liquidity as Bitcoin was absolutely fake. The absolutely wash trading. And so it reminds us all yet again, that really the only actual public decentralized blockchain out there at scale right now is Bitcoin. It is the only actual public blockchain at scale. I wouldn't even call Ethereum quite at scale. Maybe you could call Ethereum at scale, but that would be the only one. And that's, in my opinion, not at scale. Because if it was at scale, it would have already been tanked. It would have already been destroyed, because we saw what happens when it just gets a little bit of excitement. So, with Bitcoin, it's certainly the most decentralized public blockchain at scale. And you find these crazy things out through these hacks. And so what we've seen is that all of this fake wash trading, all of this stuff is going to come more to light. We're going to mature. The Bitcoin ecosystem is going to mature. We're going to have more and more regulated exchanges to choose from around the world. Because Bitcoin is decentralized, we'll always have some unregulated exchanges. That's just the way it is, and that's great. They can compete with and add more additional features than some of the more regulated exchanges, because they're a little bit more nimble. They have a little bit more freedom that way. So we can see some experimentation there and things. But what we find out is that absolutely there's just going to be time and time again wash trading. There's going to be time and time again more skills or more scams out there, and it's just going to continue. And so all we can do is learn from these lessons. And I think that we have learned, because we're not seeing as many exchanges get hacked as much, right? So we're still seeing them get hacked, as we will continue to do, especially before everything is regulated. But we see it a little bit less, and we see customers demand a little bit more. And we're seeing now a lot of people demanding Lightning support for some exchanges. People are requesting that now, and so we're going to see a lot more things come down the line. But at the end of the day, right now, because Bitcoin is so early, we still call it the Wild West. Like, it really is still the Wild West of crypto out there. There's a few, we're moving absolutely in a direction, like you can see the trend, we're moving towards a more secure and sound money every day, as far as centralized exchanges. But we still have years and years to go, and we still have at least a couple of more cycles of Bitcoin price cycles before the alts even start really kind of dissipating away from Bitcoin. Because right now everything is correlated to Bitcoin. Everything will continue to be correlated to Bitcoin for years to come. It's really going to take at least another cycle or two before we see some kind of disparity there.
Yeah, you were just saying the Wild West thing and how we're moving forward, and my brain went to, like, this weird vision, because it's like, I don't know. You can try to regulate this all you want. We can try to have regulated exchanges. Like you said, we're going to have decentralized ones as well that are unregulated. But
we're always going to have some kind of unregulated exchange because of the decentralized nature of Bitcoin.
Well, absolutely. But the problem I see with all this, like, not problem, honestly, for me, but like, I think the next step from Bitcoin's Wild West environment is fucking Mad Max. It's Mad Max, bro. It's not any Futurama looking ordered. No, it's chaos, because the decentralization, unregulated alternatives will always win. You know, there's less borders to entry, less velvet rope, and anytime you say no KYC, no this, no that, and you're appealing to more end users, right? Like,
no, so I'm gonna disagree with that pushback and say a couple things. So first of all, Bitcoin simultaneously, the Bitcoin and crypto ecosystem simultaneously always grows simultaneously between regulated and non-regulated. Right. So there's all sorts of black market activity simultaneously growing with non-black market, right? With white market activity. So the beautiful thing about Bitcoin and the fact that it is decentralized, it can grow simultaneously in the KYC and non-KYC realms, and we're seeing that continue to grow. So we're seeing BitMEX get more and more popular, but yet we're also seeing some huge financialization of Bitcoin in the Western world, right? With things like Backed and Fidelity. So all of this stuff is happening simultaneously. Now, what I will say when it comes to KYC is that, yes, there'll always be non-KYC exchanges, but in the end, eventually, all the KYC exchanges will have most of the liquidity, because that is where most of the people, the more wealthy people, will be trusting, right? So they're going to have more. The people with the most money are going to go to where it's the most safe and secure, and that is going to be regulated KYC exchanges. So that is why those will eventually absolutely take off and go crazy. Now, we're still going to have things like Binance. We're still going to have things like these decentralized exchanges, but they're just simply not going to be able to keep up with the liquidity amount that these centralized exchanges are, just because the people that are on those exchanges don't have nearly the same amount of liquidity that people do on the big exchanges. The market makers are simply not as big. However, that doesn't mean that they're not going to keep growing. I mean, they will keep growing. It's going to get big and big. And the beautiful part that I love about all of this is that it's growing simultaneously. At the same time, Lightning Network is getting more popular. Liquid is getting more popular. Yep. At the same time, that's getting more popular. We're getting more amazing cryptographic primitives on Bitcoin. We're getting, like, for example, we're getting Schnorr starting to get soft forked in there eventually. So all of this stuff is growing simultaneously. And that's what I really love about Bitcoin, because people try to put it in a box like it's going to be a store of value forever. I mean, this is all for clickbait. You know, that's what they do. But Bitcoin's going to be either store of value forever, or it's going to never be a medium of exchange, or they're just declaring all these things. And as we know, Bitcoin is not the same as it was last year. It never is. It always gets more optimized, gets more feature rich, gets a bigger ecosystem, and eventually we'll go through all the 7 network effects that Trace Mayer likes to say. And the first one, or the big one, being the financialization. That is pretty much here, and that's going to grow in droves, especially going into 2020, the 2020 halving.
Yeah, you know, you're absolutely right, man. And I just like to poke the bear every once in a while. But what I meant in that is, like, the regulation is only as powerful as your ability to implement your enforcement of it. And this decentralized, you know, technology, blockchain, Bitcoin, and all these altcoins, you can't enforce regulation. That's the real problem that they're going to have when it comes down to it. Like,
you can't enforce it, but people want it. There are people clamoring for more regulated
exchange. But when now you have these decentralized exchanges coming up with awesome features and ideas, and the centralized ones will be pressured to implement them. Yeah, and then you have the centralized ones lobbying to have these decentralized abilities implemented. So eventually, what we want, unregulated and decentralized, will just be given to us, because they'll want to provide that option to us in a centralized way as possible, but also giving us as much as we want is decentralized and permissionless.
That's what's beautiful, is that there's all these niches. There's custodial, there's non-custodial, there's blending of the two. Like you have something like HODL and Casa, right, where they hold a part of the key, right? They hold one of the keys. And so you're going to have all of these combinations, and it's going to be great because they're all going to grow simultaneous. But I assure you, Ken, that there will be many, many billionaires that will demand regulated exchanges. There's trillions and trillions of dollars, Ken, that are sitting on the sideline right now, trillions of dollars in derivatives and in precious metals and all of these things that would like to get exposure to Bitcoin that simply can't right now. And they're going to, they really want to. And when that capability and ability starts to present itself with things like Backed and going into 2020, they're going to get a taste of it. They're going to love it. They're going to want more. And people are going to provide more services.
So what are your thoughts on demand is just going to be services then?
I'm sorry.
Like you're right, the demand is going to be huge, but the demand isn't just for Bitcoin. It's for custodial services, right? Those trillionaires, they want Coinbase Pro. That's what they want. They want you to hold my keys.
Says
And
yes and no, right? They want something like Coinbase Pro, but they want it from a trusted name, like State Street or Fidelity or something like that, right? And then they want that to be fully insured and regulated. And we're just not there yet to be able to provide that type of solution yet. But the closest people to doing this are backed. Yeah.
and they're the ones. I don't know how their ETF's going anymore. Did they withdraw it? I mean, I feel like they withdrew and then they put it back in. And did they? No,
essentially, so they withdrew it, but then literally only a couple of weeks, maybe it was like a month or two tops. Later,
okay, so they did resubmit.
Oh yeah, they're not giving up. Remember, they only and it's really hard to approve an ETF because of all the requirements, because these large wealthy people and market makers, very rightly so, want to make sure that the risk is as low as possible, and they will wait. They've got all the time in the world. They will wait. There's trillions, like I say.
They're also a little upset that the people submitting the proposal for the ETF have a pretty large stake in the thing they're trying to have turned into an ETF, which will inevitably inflate their previous investments. So it comes off sort of like intimidating to a traditional investor to come in and invest in something that they didn't already have. So there's no incentive to pump it now, right? Like, that's why I think they're really pushing back on these ETFs so they can accumulate on the back end, and then they could submit the ETFs. They don't want to miss out on this.
Well, that's why I said the patience, right? That's why I said they're extremely patient. The market is extremely patient. It will absolutely have more patience than you will ever have. And so these trillionaires and these billionaires with these trillions of dollars of liquidity will absolutely wait for the best time. And they are absolutely waiting it out. They are just circling and waiting. Remember that what they mostly pay attention to.
I think they're causing something. They're manipulating.
There's absolutely manipulation. There's absolutely manipulation with some, but regardless, all the whales, they see Bitcoin, they see the writing on the wall, so they're just waiting and to make the money. Because remember, they're going to make money all the way up and all the way down.
But when they do start to buy, they're not going to be buying on an exchange like you and I buy it, or peer to peer where it reflects on the market. They're buying OTC. And if you're really rich, right? Yeah, for the most part. And if you're really rich, you're buying in large amounts. You probably got a faucet directly from a miner, and you're getting your Bitcoin, virgin Bitcoin. You know, you're avoiding it, having to go on. You're getting it right to a hardware wallet. Boom.
There's always market makers on regular exchanges, though. There's always market makers on regular exchanges, and there's always some information. So essentially, there's always somebody that knows more than you, right? And they're going to be present across all the exchanges. Wherever there's money to be made, there's going to be somebody sticking around. So they're going to see the OTC market price grow up. They're going to know. They're going to see the biggest thing that these guys pay attention to, right? Is a few of the indicators, right? The moving averages and that RSI. They know when the market is turning around and getting ready to go again, because they look at all the right and the correct statistics. They know, because they've been doing this for decades and decades and damn centuries, right? So they know what the hell a market looks like when after it crashes and when it goes back. They've seen this pattern a million times in a million different things. And now Bitcoin, of course, is not a stock, so it's a little bit different in that it has network effects that can just keep it going up forever and ever, essentially a never-ending cup and handle, right? But at the same time, they know, so they're waiting absolutely for these moving averages to get broken. For example, the 120-week and the 200-week. We're actually bouncing off the 200-week, but they're waiting for things like the 30 and the 120-week moving averages to get broken, and then they're gonna come in. They're absolutely gonna buy like crazy. So the market makers will buy, the people will buy off OTC. The biggest thing to take away is that everybody right now is buying a little bit. Everybody is stacking sats, right? So even if it's you'd be surprised how many people are actually even just a little bit buying, even some of the billionaires.
Jack said he buys, I think, $3,000 worth of Bitcoin a week in Cash App.
Yeah, like 3,000 to 10,000. I forget what it was. But he says he hits his limit every week.
Yeah, and so I think it's 3,000. So that's pretty. Unless he has a bigger limit, which would be a little biased since he owns the place. But I think my limit's 3,000 on Cash App.
Absolutely, and you can up that limit depending on how much identification, right, and how much liquidity you're willing to share. But at the same time, the point is that everybody's buying. They're all buying right now because we are absolutely in the accumulation stage. No question about it. And even if we have another leg down, we're still in when you look at the date where we are, we're still in the accumulation stage, because we are absolutely expecting the top of the next bull rally to happen between 2021 and 2022. That's where we're going to top again. We're absolutely looking to top right around there. So because of that, we have to start going up eventually, which means these averages will have to start being broken, and they absolutely will be broken, but it takes time. And a lot of people don't realize this. Like, I'm more of a macro guy. I don't day trade, but I look at the long term, the long term charts, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna break that 120 week. We're gonna break the 30 week eventually. It's literally you just gotta wait for the damn time market to eventually go, and then eventually we'll cross it. Like, it takes months, and sometimes it takes years, but it's going to happen.
What's the catalyst for this pattern?
Really, it's just human psychology, because that's all markets are, right? Are humans. So we essentially repeat a lot of the same patterns over and over again. And Bitcoin is no different. Bitcoin is no exception. We will absolutely continue to repeat very similar patterns over and over again. For example, if you overlay the 2013, 2014 bull market with the 2017 bull market, very similar. And their crashes, very, very, very similar. The crashes was actually more similar than the rises. But they're very, very, very similar. And I expect the next one to be very similar as well. But just like the last one, a little bit more extended, right? A little bit more a little bit longer. So it's just a matter of human psychology continuing to repeat itself. And people a lot of times they're like, TAs, it's garbage. And all it really is just no different than human psychology. Some people think human psychologists, right? They think that's all hooey. They think that's all BS, right? But I'm sorry, there's some stuff in there that has some truth and merit to it. Just like in TA, there's some stuff in there. And really the only things that I care about are long-term are the RSI and the moving averages.
All right, well, I wanted to touch on some of these past crypto scams, and actually kind of is like the evolutionary stages of any financial industry, right? Like Bitcoin, when it first was created, was truly peer-to-peer. It was a nightmare to try to get your hands on it until exchanges like Mt. Gox stepped up, and they were custodial services for the need to find liquidity, right? Like, how do I use this, do this, trade it? Where do we get money for it from? So the next the next step would be how do I loan this out? How do I borrow from it right now that I have it? Not just trading it. We have exchanges, and that was kind of like the first step. We had trading, and now we see that with the traditional market, you can take your stocks and you can loan them out, and now you're trading and you're loaning stocks and you're making money on your money. And people want that ability in Bitcoin as well. They want to be able to take their Bitcoin, go to the bank, and get a loan for a house based on how much Bitcoin they have. And we're starting to see some of those services come up. And unfortunately, whenever you say the word lending in this industry, first thing that comes to people's mind is BitConnect and BitPetite, USI Tech, Gladiacoin, OneCoin, all these scams that promised us, pretty much what we're starting to see now with things like even like Celsius Network, who are insured lending platforms. I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are on like the impact that, what BitConnect has done. Did it have an impact? Was it something that may be a blip on the radar, or is it more of a crater in our history?
Yeah, so essentially, like I say, time is very cyclical. Patterns are very cyclical. Human psychology doesn't really change over the course of millennia. For the most part, we still have this incentive-based system with things like money, right? We still kind of want to do the same things, start a family, make an impact on the world. So that kind of stuff always just ties in to all of these scams. They always prey on some of the human feelings and the human emotions that just have been the same for many millennia. And so the scamming over the decades and over the centuries and over the millennia have gotten pretty good, but they all, if you look back, they all repeat the same thing. They all prey on people wanting to get rich, right? They usually prey on the poor, things like that, but a lot of them can prey on the rich too. So with BitConnect, I just feel I feel so much empathy for all of those people, so much sympathy for all of those people that lost money in BitConnect, because if you look across at scams, anything promising 5-10% per day is absolutely going to be a scam. You cannot have scams that have that type of percentage per day. Like there's just nothing that exists that can produce that type of value that fast. Now, the average person doesn't understand the economics behind that, but we can try to educate people that on things like, look, if there's multiple percent per day, it is absolutely going to be a scam.
With a 10-tier downline too.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. I mean, they were promising things like 6 to 7%, 9, 8, sometimes 10% a day. And so that is just terrible. So if you want some kind of guideline, I mean, what you're looking for is like Wall Street tries their best to get 10% a year. Okay, if you can beat 10% on a year on Wall Street, you're pretty good trader. And of course, we've seen with Bitcoin, we've seen a lot higher rise than that, and that actually makes some Wall Street people jealous. But if you can get more than 10% a year, then you're doing pretty good, and it's probably not too much of a scam if you're hovering around.
So you think if BitConnect had more honest percentages, that they could have been more like legit and sustainable and not a scam?
So the problem with BitConnect is that it was scam all the way down. So it
was intended to be a scam from day one.
From day one, it was a very well thought out, very well planned, very well executed scam. Now, eventually, of course, the U.S., as it does, found out scammers pretty early, a little bit earlier than the other countries. For example, they were kicked out of Texas and Florida, I think, pretty quick.
Yeah, but Texas wasn't playing at all.
Yeah, so where they really made all their main amounts of money then, of course, is Asia. That's where they really started raking in the bank, Russia, Asia, and then, of course, Africa. So that is something to take away. But yeah, I think people learned a lesson. Of course, I think there's some people that learned a lesson. Unfortunately, all the people in BitConnect, their main lesson was to stay away from crypto entirely. So that is a little bit of a downer. But again, as we see Bitcoin time and time again will go up, will break new all-time highs. They'll see it breaking new all-time highs. They'll go back and start researching, and they'll get back in eventually.
That's the silver lining right there.
That's the silver lining. There's always remember the way that essentially creation of reality works is there's always an opposite reaction for every reaction.
Right. When people look at the history and still, oh my God, Mt. Gox, stole everybody's Bitcoin, and right now, even in 2019, an exchange in Canada stole thousands of Bitcoin, and BitConnect, they stole Bitcoin. Yeah, and Bitcoin's still here. It still works fine. It ain't dead. It doesn't die when these things that use it die. It doesn't. I don't think even BitConnect could have been, at this point, even been considered anything that negatively affected Bitcoin because of how much positive now you have from it being so detrimental. And then looking at where Bitcoin is today at like 4K, even you're like, Bitcoin's at 4K even after all of that. I think some of the people kind of look at Bitcoin with more of a legitimate like perspective, that it has what it takes to be a long-term technology because of all of the failures that surround it. Bitcoin has never failed, just the things around it have failed it. And I think that those failures are like scars on people. It toughens you up if you went through it. And then you spectate that and you see how tough the technology has become because of those hardships. Dude, you look at Bitcoin and you look at your bank and you're like, yo, Bitcoin can overcome all of that. I don't need a bank anymore. There's nothing that can hurt this shit. But you look at your bank and, recently even Wells Fargo couldn't afford to give you $100 out of the ATM machine. So it's not far-fetched to think that all these historical scams in this industry haven't created more positive than negative because of that. That's the silver lining, of course, but only a very small amount of people were affected during Mt. Gox, right? There's barely 0.1% of people into Bitcoin then. Yeah,
it was very, very, very early. So I mean, thousands, not tens of thousands, right? So thousands. Right. And now, of course, with that Quadra, that was definitely in the tens of thousands of people. But essentially, what we're trying to say is that there is really nothing that you can produce as a net negative for Bitcoin, really, other than like segregating the internet itself. There's really not much that can actually produce a net negative. And even then, if they did that, Bitcoin would find a new way around that because of the incentive structure. And the
Blockstream and Casa, I think it's really possible with like $250 of worth of tech.
Yeah, so essentially what we have here and what we're also saying here is that Bitcoin really does experience that Lindy effect. So, as long as Bitcoin is here, the longer Bitcoin is here, the longer people trust it. And it really is the longest trusted chain. And so that provides the ability to have network effects because it is a network and Bitcoin can play off those with these self-perpetuating effects. And so we see that continuing to go on. And we even despite these things like BitJam, these lending platforms, and but I believe Yeah, man, it was pretty crazy. They were lending out Bitcoin, and of course, people weren't able to pay back Bitcoin when Bitcoin rose. And so, what we see now is more of a trend towards this collateral-based lending, where you give people some Bitcoin, they'll give you some fiat back on that, right? And you have the ability to buy that Bitcoin back. But essentially, things that are kind of going that direction, are just not that interesting to me. Even like the make or die kind of situation on Ethereum, they lock it up, they lock the funds up in a very, very scammy
Well,
way.
have you heard of Celsius Network? I'm not a promote, like I don't get paid to promote them, but I do talk about them a lot because I think they're really on to something when it comes to mainstreaming the institutional investing in the whole like mentality of what Bitcoin can be besides a currency. And I don't know, like have you heard of them at all or checked them out at all?
So
Because
I
they
haven't
don't
heard
lock
too
your
much.
money up. I can take my Bitcoin back an hour or 5 seconds after I put it there.
Yeah, so I mean, you can kind of just tell when something is a little bit more freedom focused, right, than not. And in my opinion, the make or die setup is definitely just focused on profit, a very scammy situation. If something lets you get your Bitcoin back at any time, obviously that's a step forward because most of the time the competitors you can tell that are scams are the ones that love to
Do you
lock your
think
funds up.
having insurance and then being a KYC and regulated and having a bit license actually matters? Or since we've seen things with all these stamps of approval fuck up and lose our money already, does it hold any weight, right? Does it even benefit a company to be regulated and have a bit license and all this if they're still potentially at the same risk as companies that don't?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're learning all the time. We're getting better all the time. So the Bitcoin ecosystem, like I said, is maturing. It's growing. It's getting more secure and easier to use all the time. So essentially, yes, of course, we're going to have customer demand, especially large market makers that are used to the traditional financial system. They're going to absolutely want more regulated exchanges, and we're going to produce them. We're going to give it to them. Now, do I think that they require things like the bit license? Maybe not. I mean, that's a little bit too far in one direction. But they will absolutely have to have some kind of regulation with these larger exchanges, with the amount of money that they're going
Insurance
to be
matters.
holding.
Insurance
Yeah,
matters, man.
absolutely, because we're going to be talking billions, and then we're going to be talking trillions of dollars.
And credibility, right? Like
Credibility is
if
huge.
I
That's
am a
why.
broker and I handle money for you and Tone Vase and Jimmy Song and everybody, and I'm the crypto broker guy, I can't afford to emotionally be responsible for all that money collectively.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need to do a job and help all these people do something with their money, you guys, right? And then I need somebody to help me with that too because it's just too much. Like we passed the buck of responsibility down the line to kind of, I would say it would almost decentralizes responsibility when people don't feel like they could, manage their own private keys and are looking for a custodial service, and that custodial service has insurance. It's just trying to pass the buck of responsibility to the favor that's risk reward for you, right? Like, are you 90% more likely to lose your own keys than Coinbase? Then maybe you might want to trust Coinbase if that's the odds. If you're 90% likely to lose your money anyway, maybe find a custodial service that is insured. And we're going to see that with 100% of the institutional investors because not one of them is going to be allowed to hold the private keys because of the biasness.
Well, there's definitely going to be a competition on both sides. So, like I say, it's really important to wealthy,
Have you
to the
seen
wealthy
this?
people. Yeah, I think I have. That's the crypto phone.
Finny phone. I got the
from
hardware wallet built right into it.
yeah. And
This is what trust fund managers are going to be carrying around.
Yeah, and this is what I predicted, for years now, is that essentially we're going to have Bitcoin come across all of our devices, just like the internet. Eventually, how everything became a smart device, your television, phone, whatever. Same with Bitcoin, it will permeate. You're going to have the
You
ability
think
to
I'm going to
send.
have a Bitcoin TV?
Well, you're gonna have the ability to absolutely send and receive Bitcoin and Lightning on your television, on your mobile phone. Will be
But
built.
do you
The
think
stack will be
underlying tech will involve blockchain or Bitcoin smart contracts or code, color coins, or anything like
absolutely. Oh
that
yeah, they're going to
nature?
involve all of that. Remember,
You
we're
think
going to
my
have
TV
Schnorr.
could be mining Bitcoin while I'm watching Netflix?
Well, that's again, we're talking about a little bit of a basic stuff here because mining is basic. I mean, you're going to be able to spend, you're going to be able to use in creative ways Bitcoin and Lightning with payments, and you'll be able to do things like stream per second. You're going to be able to do things like participate in live audience games with or live auctions and live things. When you can send money like information, there's going to be use cases that we can't exactly predict. But this stuff, the one thing we can predict is that like the internet permeated every single device, so too will Bitcoin. Absolutely, at the protocol level. And for example, at the operating system level, when you look at all the TCP/IP settings in Windows, when you look at all of these different ways to configure DNS, and you look at starting a DNS server, you look at all of this work, and you're like, holy crap, there's so much stuff, but it's all bundled in here, super nice. In Windows, for example, as early as Server 2008, you just click Add New DNS Server, and it adds all the stuff it needs. Do you know how long it took us to get to that level?
You're such a nerd. I love it. Look at how angry he is because it was hard. It was hard as shit.
Insane, dude. It was insane. And now with something, for example, Server 2008, you click Add Service, DNS Server, Next, and you watch it go. And so essentially, Bitcoin will be baked into the operating system. Will be baked into 100%. The UI. It's all that stuff. So whether that's a full node on your router, in addition to a wallet in your television, it's all going to be,
just like you have a smart setting on your TV. I see like the Lightning Network being built right into it. So like you said, you could buy things or contribute or enter. You could play a live. I didn't think until you said that, but live contests.
Oh yeah.
Like, whoa, bro.
Absolutely. When you can send money like information, like I said, there would be.
Could you imagine Survivor Crypto Edition and everybody on the island gets a Bitcoin address, and everybody who gets the least amount of Bitcoin sent to their address gets kicked off the island?
Well, they can do things like, send me this amount of money, we'll do this, or send me amount of money, we'll do this, and whatever gets the most amount of money.
Ooh, that sounds like a cam girl to me.
Yeah. That's a little bit. I guess that is a cam girl model, essentially. But yeah, the crazy stuff is when everybody can participate in it live.
So we're gonna get Joe Rogan reviving Fear Factor thanks to micropayments and cryptocurrencies. That's what I'm hearing.
But getting back to the de-risking, like this is absolutely going to play out simultaneously. We're going to have regulated exchanges. That's going to be important, but they're going to be offset by some of these decentralized non-KYC exchanges. So that's what's going to be great is that while for every major innovation or huge amount of ecosystem growth in either side will experience the other side of that. So when we see a huge growth in KYC, because there will be trillions of dollars entering the system within the next couple of years, when we see that grow up, we're going to see more people enter the other markets as well. And it's just this all rising tide kind of situation where all boats just get
when I'm able to start trading Bitcoin for stocks of fractions of Apple stocks, because now they're security tokens instead of stocks, and now I can buy 1/10 of a Facebook stock, trade it in and out of different cryptocurrencies, and you were definitely going to see the wealth be more spread around even in different investment industries because of the ties to this technology. Even I think New York Stock Exchange announced recently that they're looking at incorporating blockchain technologies, and people are kind of predicting that the market may run 24/7. They're trying to figure out how to get the stock market more like this crypto market, because they're seeing the action that they're missing by not being 24/7. They're trying to figure out how do we adopt that business model that Poloniex and Binance has. It's insane. It's killing us.
Absolutely. And so it is making a dent. Now, of course, again, because they're mostly unregulated, like Binance, the regulated exchanges don't have to worry about too much, but they absolutely see the writing on the wall. They see the demand, what customers want. They want more freedom. And this is what we're seeing. Right? We're seeing the democratization of finance. This is what Bitcoin is all about, is opening up finance to the world, providing this money and monetary system outside of the state with the ability for anybody to access anywhere. And so this is
absolutely,
we're just continuing to see this. So the internet is already, the biggest bookstore, the biggest online shopping mall, the biggest chat room, on and on and on. But now, of course, it will be the biggest stock market. So the world's biggest stock market. So we see things like Abra, the Abra app, with, like I say, the ability to trade stocks for Bitcoin, fractions of stocks per Bitcoin, and make Bitcoin with the traditional stock market.
And like 25 different currencies. I can get like euro, peso, yen, and I don't have to just hold US dollar.
So what we're seeing
that helps the economy of other nations. If I start trading in Abra from Bitcoin and stocks into peso, I'm putting some value into the peso. That helps their economy.
Yeah, and so we're seeing the the regulated exchanges react to the demand. And so, for example, 24/7 stock trading was something that was just only for the very select few just a few years ago. So, in order to do that, you have to be on the Tokyo exchange, the London exchange, the US exchange, and so only that was reserved for only the really largest top 10 or 500 companies in the world. But now with this move towards crypto, we see that it's 24/7 by default. I was watching the Tron movie the other day, the second Tron movie, the Tron 2.
Justin Sun has 2 movies about Tron? That dude's killing it. He's killing it.
Guys. The actual Tron movie. So the guy was like, and our stock is now about to trade 24/7 around the world. And it was like this just huge announcement that guess what? Our stock now is now trading 24/7. And that was a big, huge thing back then. That was only a few years ago that
yep. Yeah, so, it was like mind blowing 20 years, 30 years from now, like Star Trek type, but no, it's today, right now. We're doing it.
We're doing it now.
I kind of wanted to wrap it up on one last crypto past scam in our history here that's repeating itself yet again in the same pattern. And we touched on it earlier. It's kind of a segue, but we were talking about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And that was, in all intents purposes, a scam, just like BitConnect from the beginning by Roger Ver and Craig Wright and everybody else that was fucking involved, Jian Wu. They all intended to scam from day one with Bitcoin Cash. So I've seen that happen again and again with things like Bitcoin Gold, where they intentionally put a scam wallet in their website. So when you went to fork your Bitcoin and get your Bitcoin Gold, you were just losing your Bitcoin. Then I saw it happen again with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Private. And everybody was trying to convince you to buy, what was it, Zcash or something?
Yeah.
Fucking Zcash?
ZCL, so Zcash Classic or something.
Fuck, that was a scam, dude. And we had so many like Bitcoiners talking about like, oh, you get a 1-to-1 ratio, so go buy your Zcash.
Now we got Bitcoin Hex.
Now that's exactly where I'm going with this, bro. That's exactly, it's like, it feels like every topic that we have touched on, from the exchanges to the lending platforms, now to the forks, it's just scam history is fucking echoing hard right now. Like, if you dropped a brick into the ocean that is Bitcoin's like legacy, we're now seeing ripples of waves and they're repeating themselves over time. It's just scam.
Yeah, and that's not going to stop.
What the fuck is going on with Richard Hart and Bitcoin Hex, bro? It's killing me.
It's just this very simple. It breaks down to this. People like to make money, and that's just how it's always been. So that means that there's always going to be scams because people like to make money. So it comes back to this human psychology that essentially hasn't changed for many millennia. And so all we can do, Ken, is educate. All we can do is try to create these podcasts, try to go on Twitter, try to publicly remind people what are scams and what are not. And ultimately, we have to realize that we can't save everybody. And we never can. So we can't try to attempt to save everybody because we know that we never can. So essentially what we do is, people like Ken and myself, we just try to save as many as we can. We just try to do our part and contribute to what we can do. And because it even surprises us, like sometimes how far our ripples go, because it's very, very hard to see how far your ripples actually
I was on a cruise ship in the middle of Barcelona, and I had people coming up to me at the Coinsbank blockchain cruise. Random people. At least 10, maybe 12 people, and they came up to me and they're like, dude, you saved me from putting money in the BitConnect. I almost did it. And then, 6 months later they left, and I would have never even got broke even. Like, and it was like a dozen people, and I was like, damn, I didn't even think, like, if I helped 2 people, fuck yeah, but like 12 people
and that's how we
feel.
Like conference. That's how we feel. If we just help one or 2 people, then technically our job is successful. Because obviously, how it breaks down to is that saving one person's life can change a whole world. Can change a whole planet, because that person can go on and help somebody else, and then on it goes. And so we just try to save 1 or 2. I guess like Batman, just try to save 1. Right? Just try to save.
Well, what makes Bitcoin Hex an interesting scam is that you're incentivized to buy Bitcoin. Like, it's clever. I don't know what to do.
The problem is it's clever.
Like,
but
how do I explain this to my friends that?
So here's how we do it.
Here's
how we do it every time, because it's the same kind of scam when it comes to these forks every time, which is that they will require you to dox yourself. So whether that means showing all your coin, right, proving that all your coin exists, then they can track your IP address, or straight up demanding an email address in order to actually fork your coins. So what we see is that this is just going to be a scam that that reveals all sorts of things that's going to make people lose their privacy.
A unique data mining experiment, huh?
It's absolutely data mining. And this is the same with Bitcoin Cash. And what we see is that really a lot of these scams essentially just are all about data for blockchain analysis. And so I would not be surprised if, for example, Richard Hart would like to sell some of this data if he's collecting it to blockchain analysis, because that would be very, very, very profitable, because either way, people are going to be paying attention. Just like they paid attention to Bitcoin Cash, they're going to pay attention to see how many people stake their coin.
That's so interesting. I've been talking to a company called Data Bunker. They're like an EMP proof, like black box, pretty affordable, like hard drive. But I was telling them, like, I see a future where you're going to want to back up the blockchain as much as possible and get as many transactions as possible with as much information, IP addresses, email addresses, tied to those transactions as possible, because you're going to be able to lease this information, and I don't know the value of like what the data Facebook gets for our information, like our private messages.
Between $30 and $80 a person is what you're worth to Facebook.
Times that by 100 when it comes to your blockchain history, dude. Like these companies, like what Richard Hart's looking at making off of that data, it's insane. But he's
going to make money. The problem is he's going to make money either way. He's going to make money if it's successful or not. Because if it's not successful, it's designed to reclaim all the coin into into the people's accounts. And if it is successful, then he's going to make money because it'll be valuable. So, I mean, either way, like.
But isn't that illegal, right? If you're asking for information is currency. So therefore, that free Bitcoin hex is not free. I'm buying it with my data.
It's never free. It's never ever free.
So I purchase it with my personal information. Yeah. That's how I'm purchasing this free Bitcoin hex. So,
and unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
So when you look at this, though, from the SEC's perspective, people are giving him money for his coin, Bitcoin Hex. He is, in fact, doing an ICO. He's just not using currency for
It's technically an airdrop, but yeah, I mean, and that's why we have to wait for a little bit more regulation.
But it's not an airdrop if you're paying for it. That makes it an ICO. It's an investment.
Right. You're staking your coin.
Yep, you're staking your data, dude. It makes it so much scarier.
That as well. That you're doing that anyway by default, no matter what. But now you're definitely going to be doing it when you're talking about your chain data, your blockchain data. So that is where it starts getting scary. Like, I don't care too much about like if the NSA knows what websites I visit, but I certainly don't want them to know where I spend.
Dude, have you ever been attacked? Have you ever, not like in a weird way, but like I've had my Coinbase account at one point attacked by BitConnect. Like I had a in with BitConnect, I'd made videos about it and shit, and they didn't like me. But I had a Coinbase account, and they just kept sending me black market payments in like $1 or $2 or whatever. And Coinbase would freeze my account because I was getting Bitcoin from like blacklisted, gambling websites. And they're like, you're gambling outside the US and using us. Your Coinbase account has been frozen. And I always get worried that like if somebody knows my Bitcoin address, they could send me tainted Bitcoin. And then the SEC or the government would look at that incoming and see it come in from ISIS, for all the fuck I know. And now people are attacking my Bitcoin address with tainted Bitcoin that makes me look like I could possibly be accepting funds from terrorists.
Right, and so of course we're thwarting that with on several different fronts, where we're breaking chain analysis with various things like paywalls and pay to endpoint.
Yeah, but even Coinbase just invested heavily into, I don't know what it was.
Right, no, it's going to be a cat and mouse forever, right? They're going to try something, we're going to try something, they're going to try something. So it's going to be back and forth, but absolutely we're making progress with things like paynims from Samurai Wallet. That's an absolute great thing to do, because that allows you to give somebody a public address sort of, or a public payment address without them actually being able to see the blockchain address and where it is on the blockchain. So that's pretty cool. We're coming up with all sorts of different ways to thwart this type of blockchain analysis that absolutely is going to start or already has started to infiltrate the ecosystem. But it's going to do it in mass. It's going to continue. It's not going to stop. They're going to keep trying. People are going to keep buying blockchain analysis companies. They're going to keep harvesting data. But we're going to keep making it more and more difficult to continue to harvest that data. So it's really this cat and mouse thing. But what that means is that if you're on the latest, on the greatest when it comes to privacy technology with Bitcoin, if you're up on the latest and the greatest, they have no chance, because they're always going to be behind. What's going to be always ahead is the good guys. They're always going to be ahead of the bad guys. And so if you're using the latest and the greatest tech for something like Samurai Wallet, and over a Tor node, like you're doing pretty good. But eventually they'll find a way to debunk, to infiltrate that, and then we'll come up with a new way. But as it stands, you can always with Bitcoin, because of its decentralized nature, find a way to protect
I just
yourself.
get worried about the power that the internet service providers really have, and the government's ability to enforce their agenda through the IPFS. Like,
oh, they're already doing that. I mean, we see what Hollywood does, right? They actually scan public addresses so that as soon as you download a torrent, then they will shut down your internet.
I hate that when I'm in New York City, I can't use Changely to exchange Dash and Bitcoin. It's like not in New York City, but if I cross the board right in New Jersey, I can use the service. It's like, but why can't I use the service 20 feet over there? Oh, it's because you're in New York.
All that does is open up competition, right? So for every issue that we can have $1 billion company.
True. It's just the ability to impose the enforcement of the regulation. I mean, like, we're talking about decentralized and immutability and censorship resistance, but like,
well, just look where we're at. Look where we came from. Ken, when we came from pre-internet, where there was only a handful of newspapers around the world that controlled all the information.
Yeah, but where do you get internet from? A guy named John who makes internet in his backyard, decentralized internet, like.
Yeah, and you can do this. You actually can be your own ISP. The internet is still structured in such a way that you can become your own ISP, and there are people that do this out there. There are people that refuse to, be a part of a standard ISP, and they make their own, and then they sell it to their neighbors and things like that. So you can still do that. Now, Bitcoin, the internet itself is going through a bit of a transformation where we see all the problems with it that comes like for DDoSing and these control of these DNS servers like ICANN, and we see the centralized control. We see it there, but we're seeing new entrants into the space. We're seeing new ideas come out, and now that we have cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, that we can now fund these ideas. Because now the internet, now that it has its own native currency, we can absolutely evolve it beyond any type of state control. We can really make it fully decentralized. Now that's going to take time, decades, possibly, right? Because the internet is really, we're still sort of, and people need to step back and realize how early we are still in the internet. 30, 40 years, like we're really early. The television is 70, 80, 90 years old. So it's a big difference. And, and where the internet's going to be in another 30 years is it's going to be a lot better off, just like we're a lot better off now. We have democratized information to the point to now where we don't have to rely on just the New York Times. I can follow who I want to follow on the ground and get updates in real time.
Isn't that a problem though? I love it, right? I'm with you. Like, that is so powerful, but I think it's OP. I think it's overpowered, man. I don't think people can handle that much power. We have so many people that enjoy fake news to the point they want to believe it. They seek it, and that is their main source of information now, is misinformation.
Remember what the internet does. It democratizes power. So it democratizes power, it democratizes information, and now it's going to democratize finance. So essentially, the internet allows you to become whatever you want. Your own broadcaster, right? Your own YouTube channel, your own whatever you want to do.
But I'm all about this. I'm not against it, and I'm saying this is awesome, but it's also why we have more people that are using Doge than Bitcoin. Like, holy shit. Like, damn you guys. Like, the people can choose to do whatever they want, and sometimes they don't agree with what the best solution, right? Like, that's saying like Doge is a bad solution, but Bitcoin, like, they have a choice, so they choose not to choose the best solution, or they choose not to choose the best decentralized information, like cat videos over our podcast all day.
We're always going to have that. But real quick, Ken, I do see from the chat that I am echoing. So I don't know if you think that I'm echoing. Just want to double check that real quick.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yep. I don't think it's been going on too long because they just typed it in there. But just in case, if you can, I don't know if you can even double check that yourself or not. But that's what they're saying. Because you're still coming in nice and clean the whole time. For me.
Yeah, I think my microphone, when I moved it up, it auto balanced the sensitivity, so it started picking up. I did a lot of balancing and measuring to get my microphone to work without that echoing happen. So
gotcha.
Hopefully it wasn't happening too long. Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah. So if you guys want to type in the chat, let us know if it's good.
A quick segue into the last topic, if I have you for 5 more minutes.
Yes, sir.
We had a point in our history in crypto where ICOs ran, rampant, and a lot of people were misled, even by mainstream industry leaders. We had Kodak, we had Long Island blockchain. That was fucking insanity. We had Kik. You know, even they did an ICO and have a currency of some sort. It was just everybody did an ICO, and it's just, I think, totally tainted the technology that is an ICO. Like, ICOs aren't bad, and now everybody's like, "Yo, ICOs are evil." ICO, and no, that's like saying don't
Well,
charities
Binance.
are bad. Not every charity is bad because
Right.
the Red Cross steals 99.7% of every dollar you donate to the Red
Yeah.
Cross.
And
There's some
we have
charities that are really good and need that money, and that's what I mean with ICOs. Some ICOs genuinely, could have used it, or had their best interests in mind, or just needed money.
Well, we see
But
Binance. Binance was started with an ICO. So
Tron,
we have objective evidence to show that there are still some things that you can do with an ICO. It's just like a standard, it's not much different than a pink sheet almost in the stock market. It's really, there's low amounts of expectation. It's you're going to expect to not do well on everything, because it is such a penny stock.
everybody, you say the pink slips, right? Everybody
Yeah.
wanted a white paper so fucking bad. Like, what? Nobody knew what I see. Not every ICO had a white paper for a while. It was just like, here's the shit. They made like a
Well,
weird
there were white
form.
paper services, Ken. You could actually go and buy yourself a quick little white paper for whatever dumb project you have. It
Wow.
was absolute insanity. But remember, that's going to happen, and that's okay. We're going to go through these cycles of excitement because it's so decentralized. We're going to go too far up, and we're always going to go too far down, and this is going to continue. But during that bear market time, all of us are having plenty of time to think. So that's the beautiful thing,
Do
because
you see
Bitcoin
a
is a healthy
positive
market.
future
We're
then?
hold on, because Bitcoin is a healthy, actual healthy market and not controlled entirely. We're going to always have a bear market, a downturn eventually, and when that happens, that's when the whole community and the market and ecosystem as a whole can start to think about what we did before and start to apply the lessons that we have learned. And we've seen it every time, every bear market cycle, we start applying lessons learned. Now, of course, new scams come around. There'll always be new scams come around because there's new people coming around who simply weren't there during that time. So that's going to continue, but we can still apply a lot of these lessons that we learn in the bull market within the bear market.
So, do you see a positive future for ICOs to succeed for projects? Like, do you ever, like Binance, for example? Do you see this ever working again? Do you see like a another way to use an ICO as a means to be a successful company, or is it STOs and what is it now? The ICEs, the
So, well, yeah,
initial
with the
or
exchanges.
IE, initial exchange offerings. That's
Yeah,
the one.
IEOs.
IEOs.
Yeah, it's so here's what I can tell you is that we're always going to come again. Remember what I said? Everybody wants to make money, right? So we're always going to find new ways of skirting regulation and getting past. There's always going to be cracks found because the system again is decentralized. That's how we can find these. We can find these cracks and fix them. Where in our traditional financial system, people find the cracks, exploit it, pay off the regulators, and to continue doing it, right?
So
So
true.
it's a little bit different with Bitcoin. Eventually, we can learn our lessons and we can apply these lessons. And there's so much demand that's not like from the 1%. There's demand from a lot of people around the world that keep these people honest. And eventually, we're just going to keep going with this back and forth. Now, I am in no position to predict the financial future of crypto and how we're going to make money in the future. But I can tell you with certainty that we're going to continue to keep experimenting, whether that's ICOs or ICOs, whatever it is. We're going to keep continuing to experiment until we find something that's awesome, something that everybody can use easily, that's regulated and so on, just something that makes everybody happy. There's always going to be stuff that makes people happy and stuff that doesn't make people happy
So,
because of this
so
experiment.
what are your thoughts on STOs in general? Do you think that they have like a more permanent place in the world than ICOs did? ICOs came and went. The
The only
STOs
thing I
have.
can, man, the only thing I can say is that Bitcoin is here to stay. Like, we're just going to keep inventing all sorts of crazy things. Will STOs be here to stay? Pff, I have no idea. All I can tell you is that for sure is that Bitcoin is going to stay, and that we're going to continue creating new ways to utilize Bitcoin, continue to create new ways to bring utility to Bitcoin, like Abra, allowing you to buy stocks now with Bitcoin. We're
Yep.
just going to keep coming up with new ways and to utilize Bitcoin, whether that's for funding or whether that's for using, whether that's for the retail or for the institutional. There is so much demand. Again, guys, there is hundreds of trillions of dollars out there in the market that wants to find a secure home that simply can't right now. That's why real estate prices are so inflated. It's just ridiculous. People are trying to put their money somewhere, just somewhere
Yep.
to hold them off from the crazy money printing that's going on, guys. So Bitcoin will continue to get more utility. There will continue to be more demand to keep Bitcoin secure, and more demand for Bitcoin itself. And it's going to really revolutionize. Again, guys, if you think the internet changed the world, Bitcoin is going to change the world so much more. It's going to bring so much more transparency, so much more opportunity to all those people around the world, and just so much more opportunity even to first world people to create new types of things like ICOs or STOs or whatever it is. It's just going to bring a golden age of opportunity because we now have the ability to transact freely with one another globally.
Right, exactly. It's not just U.S. Restricted. These
Well, ICOs for the most part right now are restricted to like mostly outside.
No, that's what I mean. But the stock market, the U.S. stock market, you can't invest if you live in China or you live in India. But if there's an ICO, okay, maybe I can't invest because I live in the U.S. But it's not like I only can invest because I'm in the U.S. There's a much bigger population that this technology appeals to, that not all of them can, fast enough agree on to implement, worldwide regulations. So there's always going to be others embracing what otherwise can't.
Always arbitrage opportunity on everything from regulation to technology to niche funding markets to exchanges. Yeah, you bet.
Absolutely, man. I worry about the futures market after this ETF kind of gets approved.
I don't worry much at all, man, anymore about Bitcoin. After the UASF, I don't worry much at all. I'm watching all these things play out simultaneously. I'm watching all this demand continue to grow. I'm watching us get closer and closer to those moving averages and that RSI ticking up. I'm watching the whole thing, and it's absolutely just.
You don't think it's impossible for them to use these means of investing to manipulate Bitcoin?
Oh yeah, they're manipulating
down. I mean, like they can print fiat. You can print fiat like this. Bitcoin takes proof of work. So now I could go to the futures. I could bet on Bitcoin going down. Go grab some Bitcoin OTC, dump it on the market, get my payoff from the prediction I made in the futures on it going down. And it just, I don't know. I don't know if I.
Yeah, I mean, again, so here's the thing. They can manipulate the market all they want. They have been, of course. Remember, what we have is market makers. We have a built-in function to the markets that make sure it's manipulated because we have things like market makers. So to an extent, manipulation is really misunderstood a lot in markets. But I can tell you that there's absolutely people that are whales out there on the market that is pushing it up, that's pushing it down. But here's the difference: is that Bitcoin is global. It's on hundreds of exchanges at once, guys. It's not just on the New York Stock Exchange where only a few people have access to the servers. Like Bitcoin is absolutely the price discovery of Bitcoin is absolutely decentralized, and it's only going to get better as we have more regulated exchanges, so we can kill some of this fake trading, some of this fake volume that's really going.
It's only going to get worse though when they can start trading paper Bitcoin without these ETFs. Some of them may not even have to have.
But again,
Bitcoin.
They're going to have competition. For example, Backed is going to deliver the underlying. So there's going to be competition. There's going to be some people that are going to try to rehypothecate. Of course, there's going to be some people that won't, and there's going to be demand for both. But in my opinion, all of that doesn't matter because you can't touch my private keys. As a hodler, there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do to stop the price from going up eventually over time. There's nothing they can do. It's literally an economic certainty asserting itself on the planet. This fixed amount, this 21 million, will absolutely just destroy everything else coming up against it like a brick wall. It's the hardest and most sound money we've ever had. So it will go. So all they can do is slow it down. And have they tried and have they succeeded? Of course they've succeeded in slowing it down a little bit, but nobody can stop it. And so they can slow it down a little bit. But the thing is that because it's decentralized and the innovation continues, there's just so much opportunity. That's what really continues, is that Bitcoin, people look at it, intelligent people look at it, and they see the upside. They see that there's still tens and hundreds of trillions of dollars of liquidity that will still come into the system eventually. And so they know this 21 hard cap. So that's why, again, Ken, I don't worry too much about these types of things. Of course, they're going to play their games, guys. This is what they do, right? You're not expect a dog to not bark. This is just what they do. But now the difference is that we have a sound money with decentralized price discovery and incentive for the whole world to improve upon it, not screw it over, right? Like right now, there's nothing but incentives to screw over the current system. People game it like
it's debt-based society.
We're incentivized.
Killing, people.
You're incentivized to game the system like crazy right now, and that's just the way the system is built. But with Bitcoin, again, there's going to be games played, and that's fine. But with Bitcoin, this fixed amount, again, with this decentralization, you just can't stop it. You can only slow it down a little bit. So I just don't worry too much about hypothecation, because for every rehypothecated exchange, there's going to be somebody who's going to actually deliver the underlying to take the other side of that bet. There's going to always be competition. And even if it's not, even if it takes a while for like it to spread out geographically. So even if there's only a couple exchanges in Asia that aren't rehypothecating, eventually that will create enough demand to make some other exchanges to not rehypothecate. And so games will get played, but Bitcoin is the long game, guys. You got to think the long term. You got to think in terms of decades, Ken. And when you're talking about worrying about a little bit paper Bitcoin, that's just short-term stuff, short-term games that of course they're going to play. But over time, because of this 21 fixed cap, they can't stop it. It will continue that never-ending cup and handle until it's essentially sucked in all of the value that it can.
So I guess we're gonna wait. How many more months is it till we see this next movement?
Well, really what we're waiting for the most part right now is to break the 120-week and 30-week moving averages, which by my prediction should happen somewhere in the fall, end of summer, August, September, October, something like that, maybe by the end of the year at the latest. But once we break those averages, then we can start our stair step. And the stair step comes before the parabolic blow-offs. The stair step is essentially the bull market. And so that can, for our last bull market, lasted almost 2 years. So this bull market will absolutely last almost 2 years. Again, it's gonna be a long bull market, guys. It's gonna be long and fun and great. And again, we're expecting this to start next year, and then have another parabolic blow off somewhere between 2021 and 2022.
Do you think Lightning being more, I would say, more user friendly and being worked on right now, and being implemented into wallets like the Blue Wallet, was like pretty easy experience for myself to use the Lightning wallet on there? And do you see like that being a potential catalyst to kind of be like sort of some jet fuel in that boost?
So for this particular cycle, I don't for this particular cycle. Now, the next cycle going into the 2024 halving, absolutely.
Really, that far out?
Doubt. Oh, and remember, you got to think about how things play out. People think that that's a long time. Right, like a year or two. Oh, so long in Bitcoin, right?
It is, man. It's like
we get spoiled by crypto. We get spoiled by crypto. But in reality, when you're talking about manufacturing, when you're talking about building protocols, when you're talking about building networks, building companies, a year or two is absolutely not a long time. It's a few quarters. And so this is how you have to think when you're talking about this technology that's going to build these foundations that's going to last for decades and decades and decades and centuries, eventually centuries. We're building these protocols that are going to last centuries. So absolutely, it's going to take a couple of years to take. Now, my opinion, like I say, I see Lightning being an absolutely huge part of the cycle after this cycle. It's going to drive retail market. It's going to drive retail demand. It's going to drive all sorts of stuff, video games and things like that. Yep. But where we are right now is over the next couple of years, we have still years to go of experimentation, security hardening, and things like that. Remember, Bitcoin is only 10 years old. Lightning is only launched this year or like last year in beta. It hasn't even launched fully yet. So we're not even close to 1.0. We're going to get real close to 1.0 around 21, 2022. We're going to get real close. And that's where we can start to see a big uptick in that hockey stick going into the 2024 cycle.
That's a really interesting perspective, man. I wasn't thinking, I guess I'm antsy. I guess
well,
I'm
see,
just,
for
like,
me,
excited because I'm just like...
Well, check it out. I'm more of a macro guy, so I try to look at the long-term trends and pay attention to those, because the short-term, to me, those trends just really aren't that interesting. So I like to think about the long-term, and I base all my long-term predictions and understandings off of and around the halvings. The halvings are very, 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 very big deal events in Bitcoin. And so everything, if you look at the halvings, you can see the price, like here's the halving and here's the halving. It just goes ching and then ching. And so it responds
every time.
A lot of people think that, everything is priced in, and it's not. The market will continue to go up and up. So what we have here is a guaranteed lever to allow the liquidity to continue to build inside of Bitcoin, that built-in incentive structure. And so what I do is I just base all my things around the halving, because I'm a software developer. I know how long software takes. Like, I know that shit takes years to build. I know it takes years, and that's just regular software, not let alone protocols, guys. Protocols, oh my God, that takes even longer. So I know how long this stuff is. I know how hard this stuff is. So that factors into my predictions. And like I say, I mean, and I am perfectly happy with Lightning not taking off till the next cycle. That is absolutely beautiful. That means we have more time to build, more time to harden, more things we can get more creative. And when the world is ready, to adopt it. It will. It simply will. It just Bitcoin always goes to where it's needed first. And eventually, when the whole world needs it, when it realizes, then after the next crazy cycle that we have of fiat that's going to go down, the world is going to realize that they need Bitcoin. Some people already know. A lot of people already know that they need it. I know I need it to protect myself and hedge myself against this crazy freaking traditional financial system. But eventually, everybody else will find that out too, and that could take time. That could take decades. But with this fixed amount, this 21 million coin, it's simply an inevitability.
Yeah, I don't know. I think even if it catches on as a fad in the mainstream, what is it? For somebody posted the math. Either way, there's a lot more millionaires than there are 21 million Bitcoin. So even if they all wanted to buy one, there isn't enough. They can't all each have one.
Absolutely.
There's more than 21 millionaires in the world that
there's more than 21 millionaires in just California.
Right, exactly. I can't remember the number of millionaires. It was ridiculous. But like, even if it caught on like a fidget spinner as a fad, as a fashion statement, or a status symbol, I own 1 Bitcoin. If it caught on like that in the mainstream, there isn't enough for everyone to have one. And I don't think that that's even in our nature, in our DNA, and capable by default for our brains to comprehend, right? Like,
well, humans absolutely think in linear terms because every day we live our lives one day,
and then we die eventually, right?
Right. We eat our food like 1 spoonful at a time. We don't understand that 30 steps gets you to 1 billion instead of 30 when you start talking about exponentiality. So people don't understand. Developers kind of understand this more, but what the regular people have to do is rely on smarter people like myself, like you can, and to try to tell them that, look, when we're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about billions, we're talking about trillions, we're talking about exponential growth, not linear growth. And that is very difficult for the average person to understand, that we went from $1 parity of Bitcoin with $1 to $20,000 a coin. That is absolutely unreal for the average person to predict it and to think. And when you see it play out, you start to realize that this is it. You have people like Ray Kurzweil, right, that absolutely try to bring home the importance of exponentiality in these types of things in networks and in circuits. This is really, really important to predict and to understand these trends, because this is how we can create companies around these trends.
Oh, there's going to be companies around renting Bitcoin for coding to be developed on top of Satoshis. I already see this. It's like, if you have a bunch of Bitcoin, if you have like 1,000 Bitcoin right now, say, that 1,000 Bitcoin, you may not even need to use it for trading or whatever, because you're going to be able to like rent that out to companies that are going to be using Satoshis to develop smart contracts or color coins, or doing, what is it? Liquid is getting a lot of attention right now. And there's other uses for Bitcoin besides it just being a transfer of value or store of value, where I like to use the analogy, if you hand Banksy a $20 bill, and Banksy draws on it, it's going to increase that $20 bill in value exponentially. Now, if I give a developer like you some Satoshis and you can develop on it, which is basically creating your art on top of it, you created more value to that Satoshi than it was before. The difference between the fiat and the Satoshi contribution of value is, we don't know how many $20 bills there are in existence. I know exactly how many Satoshis are left after you took one out of supply. So it increased every Satoshi's value a little bit because you did something with it. And now it's permanently being used in this means outside of the currency. It stores that, at least it's like the resistance, or the support. I mean, the support just gets deeper and deeper support because of that, right? There's so many more uses to Bitcoin.
Yeah, so essentially what we have is so what we have essentially is Metcalfe's law. I mean, just the more people that are in the network, the more valuable it becomes. And then what happens is these people continue to create utility, and that just drives more value. And so we have this never-ending self-fulfilling prophecy of Bitcoin that just keeps continuing to perpetuate. People want to make it more valuable, so they bring in more utility, which brings in more value, which brings in more utility, which brings in more value. And so this cycle we see repeat over and over again. This is why Bitcoin continues to grow so fast. Now, people might think that Bitcoin goes slow, but every year it gets more and more optimized. And we can look back just a few years ago and see that that block propagation is just orders of magnitude more optimized and faster than it was, even a few years ago.
Right on, man. I feel like I gotta let you get going, bro. I don't want to kidnap you all day. Let everybody know where they can find you on the internet, dude. I know it's at The One Vortex and CryptoCast Network. Did you want to tell us that if you have anything tricks up your sleeves, plans for 2019, any event you're attending or weddings you're gonna crash, or you want me to use any referral links? You got a referral link? I fucking love referral links, bro.
I don't know about crashing weddings, but no, yeah. So of course, you can find me on Twitter at the One Vortex. That's where I put a lot of my consciousness out there. That's where I spend a lot of time, at the One Vortex, all spelled out. And of course, I have my YouTube channel with the logo behind me here, the CryptoCast Network. We have a bunch of shows there, bunch of new shows every week. We have some great content on there, and one of those shows is the Bitcoin News Show, which of course will be tomorrow. We try to do that every other Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific. It bounces around a lot, but we're definitely going to have a new show tomorrow. We'll talk Bitcoin for about an hour. There we have a panel show, essentially, with
oh, that's cool.
a round table type of view. And yeah, we get a lot of opinions. I try to bring as many opinions as I can to bear for the people to understand Bitcoin better and better.
Hey, if you ever need a crypto comedy hour, I got you guys.
Yeah, man. Can't I tell you, man? I still think it's a crime. I think I tweeted this to you, but I still think it's a crime that you don't have your own reality show, Ken. Because I tell you, dude, it's just hilarious to watch, especially when you were out there trying like at 3 a.m. trying to find it. Like, it's great because you're like, oh man, you feel for this person. You want them to get to not be without a hotel, right? You want them to reach the end goal, but then Ken, you're such an entertaining person that you make it funny, right? So then people are just laughing with you while we're sharing this experience with you.
Yeah, he's talking about when I was lost in Hong Kong at 3 a.m.
You're just a great entertainer, Ken, is what you are. And I just I'm glad that you're out there, talking about Bitcoin, promoting it, things like that, because you're absolutely an enjoyable person to watch. And of course, we know in real life that you're a great guy. We've seen the things done for the community. So yeah, man, just keep it up. And I'm just super proud to be on the show, man. Really, always an honor on my side.
I'm honored to have you on. Like I said, you're one of the guys that inspired me to get behind the camera myself when I was watching the World Crypto Network. It was just like, I got opinions too, damn it. You know what I mean? And
yeah, man, speak up. We need them.
And I never had the confidence to really get out there. And, with you and Adam Meister and, even Tone Vase, he came out to one of my early Bitcoin meetups in Philadelphia. And it was just like, wow, like this community is so embracing. So thank you for coming on the podcast today, Vortex. I mean, dude, You're just wealth of a knowledge. You're one of many few guys that hit right over my head with a lot of this shit because I'm not a developer, but I've got the pleasure of speaking to enough like yourself to be able to keep up a little bit, I hope. And I hope that you guys enjoyed the chat. Go ahead and check out CryptoCast Network and go to Twitter, type in @TheVortex, and give Vortex a shout out, guys. Thank you and have a day.
Thanks, guys.